I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are playing a video game in, like, God mode. You know, you have infinite health, infinite ammo, and absolutely no way to lose.
Oh, right. The ultimate power fantasy.
Exactly. And, well, it's incredibly fun at first. You just completely smash through every obstacle. But think about how long that actually stays fun. Usually it gets boring pretty quickly because there are zero stakes.
Yeah, I mean, it fundamentally breaks the reward system. Because when failure is removed from the equation, effort becomes completely meaningless.
Right. You can't lose, so winning doesn't really mean anything. And that video game analogy is essentially the core mission of today's deep dive. We are looking through a stack of sources today.
Including excerpts from Edith Hamilton's classic work on mythology and some beautifully complex ancient genealogical charts.
Yeah, and we are exploring a massive fundamental difference between the gods of ancient Greece and the gods of the Norse pantheon, because the Greek gods were essentially playing the universe in god mode. They were immortal, invincible, and because of that, they were totally incapable of true courage.
The contrast is staggering, really, when you look at the psychological weight each culture placed on its deities. I mean, in the Greek myths, when the Olympians fought, victory was a baked-in guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
But for the Norse gods living in Asgard, their reality was defined by a persistent, really heavy knowledge they were doomed.
Doomed, just straight up doomed.
Yes, they knew, as an absolute fact, that they would eventually be defeated by the giants in a final apocalyptic battle called Ragnarok.
So they were marching toward an inevitable end, and looking at the genealogical charts in our sources, you can actually see this worldview visually represented. If you trace the family trees of the Greek heroes, Achilles, Hercules, Odysseus.
Does it just go on forever?
Exactly. There are these sprawling, endless lineages branching down from a triumphant Zeus.
But flip to the Norse genealogical charts and you see mortality mapped out in ink. The family of Asgard isn't this infinite, spreading canopy. It is a finite, closed system.
It's like a roster of individuals marching steadily toward an expiration date, a date when heaven and earth will just be destroyed.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this looming apocalypse. Because knowing you were going to lose completely changes the entire concept of leadership. Like, in the Greek myths, Zeus is throwing thunderbolts and hosting endless banquets.
Absolutely. Partying all the time.
Right. But Odin, the chief of the Norse gods, is not a triumphant partying king. He feels much more like a stressed-out wartime general who has seen the enemy's numbers and just knows he doesn't have the troops to win.
Yeah, the sources paint a deeply solemn picture of him. The contrast with Olympus is really stark. I mean, even when Odin is sitting at grand feasts in his golden palace Gladsheim, or surrounded by the greatest human heroes in Valhalla, he refuses to eat.
Wait, he doesn't eat at all?
No. The texts tell us that any food set before him, he simply drops to the two wolves crouching at his feet.
He just sits there fasting while everyone else is feasting. That's intense.
It is. But he is entirely consumed by the burden of his office. Food represents the present moment, the immediate comfort. But Odin is living entirely in the impending doom of the future.
Wow.
Yeah. He relies on two ravens that perch on his shoulders. They fly across the world every single day to bring him news. Their names are Hugin, which means thought, and Munin, which means memory.
So while others are celebrating, Odin is constantly pondering what thought and memory bring him.
Exactly. He is obsessed with postponing Ragnarok.
And the lengths he goes to for the wisdom to delay that destruction are, well, they're shocking. We aren't talking about studying ancient scrolls in a library here. He literally sacrifices pieces of his own body.
Right. The physical toll is immense.
Yeah, like he goes down to the Well of Wisdom and asks the guardian, Mimir, for just a single drink, and the price is one of his eyes. And Odin just pays it.
He subjects himself to agonizing pain for even the slightest tactical advantage. I mean, to learn the magic of the runes, these powerful inscriptions that could literally alter reality. Odin hung for 9 whole nights on a windrock tree.
9 nights, pierced by a spear, right?
Yes, wounded with a spear. In the ancient poetry, he describes this act as being offered to Odin, myself to myself.
Wait, hold on. This brings up a major question for me. He goes through all this suffering, and then he turns around and gives these magical runes to mankind.
He does, yeah.
And he also steals this magical skaldic mead from the giants that turns people into poets, and he gives that to humans, too. So is he actually being a benevolent god here, or is he just looking at his doomed spreadsheet of troops and selfishly deciding he needs to arm the humans so they can be cannon fodder in his personal war?
Ah, that is the brilliant tension of Norse mythology. It's likely both. I mean, he genuinely values humanity, but he's also a pure pragmatist.
Yeah.
He knows the dark is coming, and he needs warriors who can stand beside him. So he isn't saving them out of pure charity. He's equipping them because their survival is intrinsically tied to his own.
That makes so much sense. So what kind of universe requires this level of desperate defense? Because to really get why Ragnarok is so terrifying, we have to look at how this Norse universe was put together. And spoiler alert, it was not built with magic wands or spoken into existence with a gentle word.
No, not at all. The creation myth here is incredibly gritty. And to understand why, you really have to consider the physical reality of the Norse people. They lived in harsh, freezing environments where survival was just a daily struggle. Their creation story reflects that. In the beginning, there was just a yawning chasm called Ginnungagap, and to the north was Niflheim, a realm of pure, freezing death and ice.
And to the south was Muspelheim, right, a land of blazing fire.
Precisely. So you just have these extreme elements crashing into each other. The rivers of ice flowed into the chasm, and the fiery clouds turned that ice into mist. And out of that violent collision of freezing and boiling, the first giant was formed.
And his name was Ymir?
Right, Ymir.
So Ymir is like the grandfather of the Norse universe. But Odin and his brothers don't exactly throw him a welcoming party. They straight up murder him.
They do more than murder him, actually. They dismantle him to build a physical universe.
Jeez.
Yeah, this wasn't abstract magic. They used his blood to make the sea, his body to make the earth, and his massive skull to form the heavens.
It's an absolutely visceral worldview. You don't get life from a peaceful, serene garden. You get it from butchering a giant.
And my absolute favorite detail regarding humanity's place in all this, Midgard, which is the human realm, needed to be protected from the remaining giants. So the gods built a massive defensive wall around it. Do you know what they used for the bricks?
I have no idea. Bones.
Ymir's eyebrows.
Wait, what?
Yeah. They took the massive, coarse eyebrows of the dead giant and wove them into a fortress for mankind. First, humans were made from ash and elm trees, sharing the earth with dwarf craftsmen and elves, all protected by a giant's eyebrows.
That is wild. They literally fortified our reality with giant facial hair.
It just shows you how thoroughly they utilized the brutality of their existence. And at the center of this universe, they place Yggdrasil.
The world tree.
Exactly. A wondrous ash tree that supports all the realms with its three massive roots. One reaches hell, one reaches the frost giants, and one reaches mankind. Beside one root is Urda's well, guarded by the three Norns past, present, and future who allot men's lives. But there's a terrible catch to this tree.
There's always a catch.
Always. Down by the root near Niflheim, in the freezing dark, there is a serpent. And this serpent and its brood are constantly, endlessly gnawing at the foundation of the world tree.
So it's a ticking time bomb. Someday, they'll kill the tree and the universe will crash down. That feels like the perfect metaphor for their cosmology. A universe with a serpent chewing at its root is essentially decaying from the inside out.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Which explains why the eventual destruction of Asgard doesn't actually start with some cinematic battlefield clash against the giants. It starts with an internal betrayal. The foundation is rotting, so the society rots.
And this brings us to the tragedy of Balder. Balder was the most beloved of all the gods. But he starts having these terrible dreams foretelling some great vague danger.
So his mother steps in.
Right. His mother, Frigga, Odin's wife, decides to intervene. She travels through the entire world and extracts a solemn oath from every single thing. She makes every rock, every weapon, every plant, every animal swear they will never harm Balder.
And it seemingly works. Balder essentially becomes invulnerable. The sources say the gods turn it into a party trick. They stand around throwing rocks and swinging swords at him, and the weapons just magically bounce off or roll away.
It becomes this rare, light-hearted game for a group of doomed deities. But Frigga missed one thing. She overlooked a tiny, seemingly insignificant mistletoe shrub, assuming it was just too weak to pose a threat.
Which brings me to my biggest pushback against Odin's so-called wisdom. He sacrifices his eye to know everything, but his HR policies are terrible.
How do you mean?
Why is Loki allowed to hang out in Asgard? Loki is the son of a giant. He constantly causes trouble and clearly hates everything good. Yet the sources say Odin let him roam freely because they had sworn some vague brotherhood for a reason never explained. Why keep the guy who is obviously going to betray you?
Because, well, what's fascinating here is that Loki represents the entropy we were just talking about.
Yeah.
You can't just banish chaos from a decaying universe. It's woven into the fabric of existence.
I think that makes sense.
Loki's nature is to ruin whatever is pure. He sees everyone celebrating Balder, and his jealousy takes over. Disguised as a woman, Loki tricks Frigga into admitting her one mistake with the mistletoe.
He finds the one flaw in the armor.
Exactly. He procures the mistletoe and brings it to the game.
Oh,
He finds Baldur's brother, Hoder, who is blind and sitting out because he can't see to throw anything.
oh no.
Yeah. Loki plays the helpful friend. He physically places the mistletoe in Hoder's hand, guides his arm, and has him throw it. The mistletoe speeds right to Baldur and pierces his heart. The most beloved god falls dead.
An inside job, and the grief of the gods is just absolute. But they don't accept it immediately, right? They send a rider, Hermod, on Odin's horse Sleipnir, down into Niflheim to negotiate with Hela, the goddess of the underworld.
Yes, and Hela actually offers a deal.
A tough deal.
It's a cruel sliver of hope. She tells Hermod that if it can be proven that absolutely everything in the universe weeps for Baldur, she will release him. But if even one living creature refuses, she keeps him forever.
So they send messengers everywhere, and it works. Men, gods, the animals, the earth itself, they all cry. They're so close to saving him until they find one random giantess sitting in a cave.
She refuses.
Yeah. She mocks them, saying, "Only dry tears will you get from me."
And the implication in the sources is that this giantess was likely Loki in disguise again, just twisting the knife. Baldur is lost forever, and the gods finally drop any pretense of brotherhood and turn their full wrath on Loki.
And the punishment they design for him is horrifying. They bind him deep in a cavern and place a venomous serpent directly above his face. Its poison drips down, causing unimaginable pain.
His wife, Sigyn, tries to catch the venom in a cup.
Right, whenever she has to turn away to empty it, the poison hits him. The sources claim his agonizing convulsions are actually the cause of earthquakes in the human world.
It's a remarkably brutal image. But Baldur's death is a profound pivot point in their mythology. It proves that no one is safe from mortality, not even the best of them.
Yeah.
It also reveals a really fascinating power dynamic within the Norse cosmos, because in Asgard, the male gods project this obvious martial power. But the ultimate finality, the kingdom of death, is entirely a woman's sphere.
Think about what that meant for an actual Norse person sitting around a fire. You spend your whole life acting like a hyper-aggressive, fearless warrior, but you know your ultimate fate is entirely in the hands of women.
It's quite the contrast.
The sources highlight this perfectly. In Greek myths, goddesses like Athena are loud, standing right next to Zeus, shouting on the battlefield. But Norse goddesses wield a different kind of quiet, absolute control.
Like Frigga, for instance. She is described as extremely wise, but she sits in silence, secretly spinning threads of gold, refusing to tell anyone what she actually knows. But the real power, the terrifying authority, belongs to Hela. In the cold, pale kingdom of the shadowy dead, her rule is absolute. When she says Baldur stays, not even Odin can overrule her.
But women also control the access to the battlefield glory. Right, the Valkyries.
Oh, the Valkyries are pivotal. The word literally translates to choosers of the slain. We often picture them just waiting tables in Valhalla for Odin, but their primary job was to ride into the chaos of human battlefields.
Right.
They literally pointed their fingers and decided who won, who died, and who earned the honor of going to Valhalla.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because Valhalla isn't just Odin's exclusive club. Here is where the source material completely upended my expectations. Freya, the goddess of love and beauty, actually gets first pick.
She does.
She rides onto the bloody battlefield and claims half of all the slain dead for herself. Odin's Valkyries only get to scrape up the half she leaves behind. Why does the goddess of love get dibs on the bloodiest warriors?
Well, to the modern mind, love and the brutality of a battlefield are polar opposites. But consider the psychology of a Norse warrior. Fighting to protect your kin, holding the line for your community, dying for your family, that was considered the ultimate act of fierce, unyielding love.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, to their poets, it was entirely natural that the goddess of love would also be the patron of heroic death. The two concepts were inextricably linked.
So you have a culture obsessed with this doomed universe. They know the giant serpent is chewing the foundation. They know their gods are going to lose Ragnarok. They know they have to die a violent death just to get drafted into an army destined for defeat.
Right.
You would assume the texts they left behind would be incredibly grim, or just nonstop, hyper-aggressive warrior mantras.
You'd expect a culture of pure nihilism or blind rage? Definitely. But their wisdom literature tells a completely different story.
Yes. The Elder Edda, which is our main source for their daily philosophy, is shockingly grounded. It's not about roaring at the sky. It's about practical, everyday survival. It's full of common sense. There's a line warning that a silly man lies awake all night thinking of many things, only to wake up exhausted while his problems remain exactly the same. I mean, I want you listening to think about that. Who hasn't been that silly man staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m.?
Exactly. It proves these were people who deeply observed the human condition. They even had a remarkably healthy skepticism about the heroic drinking culture we usually associate with Vikings. They wrote, "There lies less good than most believe in ale for mortal men." They recognized the mundane destruction alcohol could cause.
And I absolutely love their advice on keeping secrets. The text advises, tell one your thoughts, but beware of two. All know what is known to three. That is brilliant, practical, unheroic advice. That is how you survive office politics today, let alone a medieval village.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a worldview anchored in profound moderation. They weren't just warriors. They meditated on human affairs. They believed life was flawed, and they didn't romanticize unbridled ambition.
Yeah.
They explicitly warned, moderately wise each one should be, not overwise, for a wise man's heart is seldom glad. Knowing too much or trying to control everything just leads to sorrow. In a way, Odin's self-mutilating quest for endless knowledge serves as a cautionary tale for ordinary people.
So if they knew they were going to lose the final battle, and they knew that overthinking things just made you miserable, what did they actually cling to? It wasn't eternal victory, it was eternal legacy. They wrote, cattle die and kindred die. We also die, but I know one thing that never dies, judgment on each one dead.
That is the absolute anchor of their philosophy. Your actions, your reputation, the way you comported yourself when you knew you were going to lose, that is the only thing that survives you.
Which brings us back to the beautiful paradox we started with. Because the Greek gods couldn't die, their actions lacked the weight of true sacrifice. For the Norse, the very fact that their gods could be defeated is what made them truly heroic. They knew the dark was coming, and they stood their ground anyway. Out of that harsh, icy reality, they built a culture of delightful, pragmatic common sense.
And yet, hidden deep in the prophecy of Ragnarok, there is one final haunting detail. The texts say that after the sun turns black, after the earth sinks into the sea and the gods fall, well, the earth will be reborn.
Wait, reborn?
Yes, it will rise from the water in wondrous beauty, with unsowed fields bearing fruit. And in that new eternal peace, a new ruler will come.
Someone else takes over after the doom.
Yes. The ancient poet describes a ruler greater than all, one who is higher even than Odin, beyond the reach of evil or decay. But the poet immediately follows that revelation with a chilling admission. He says, "But I dare not ever to speak his name."
Wow. I leave you with this to ponder. We've just spent this entire deep dive looking at a mythology that names absolutely everything. They categorized every god, every weapon, the exact shape of their universe, and the precise mechanics of their destruction. But at the very end of all things, who or what is this ultimate, nameless force that finally breaks the cycle of doom?
It suggests a profound mystery that even the All-Father couldn't unravel.
A force that perhaps finally turns God mode back on, but this time for a world that has actually earned it.